Okay, so again, apologize, I'm late. So want to, Dave, do I make a motion to call the Inland Wetland meeting to order, or I can just call it to order?
Just call the meeting to order.
All right, so I will call the Inland Wetland meeting of January 24th, 2022 to order. We'll start with introduction of commissioners. I'll start with myself, Pat Parafort, chairperson. Let's go with Nico. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, Nico Jordan, Inland Wetland Commissioner.
Okay. Kevin.
Kevin Seaman, Inland Wetland Commissioner.
Okay. Laura.
Laura Ferguson, Inland Wetland Commissioner.
Okay. Not sure if Greg is on. Is Greg on?
I don't see him tonight, no.
Okay. Pat.
Patricia Sell, Commissioner Alternate.
Okay. And Danielle.
Danielle Monroe, Commission Alternate.
Awesome. I believe that is everybody.
Yes, and for staff, Dave McCollum, Inland Wetlands Agent,
Mary Churchill, Recording Secretary.
and we started recording this, I believe, at 7:06 p.m., Pat.
Okay. Awesome. So I think the first thing on our agenda tonight is the public hearing for the Stoney Hill Road, number 48 to 50.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we have to read the legal notice and the public notice into the record. Kevin, I'm going to put those up on my screen. I'll just share them and you can read them in for us, okay?
Kevin, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I should know by now I'm on a million Zoom meetings every day. So correct me if, all right, here we go.
Okay, Kevin, whenever you're ready.
Okay. To appear in Danbury News Times, January 11th and January 14th, legal notice. Bethel Inland Wetlands Commission will hold a public hearing on January 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom, web-based video conferencing to hear the following. Upstream Properties 2 LLC, number 48 Stony Hill Road, regulated activities. The application can be found on the Town of Bethel Municipal website at www.bethel-ct.gov or by contacting the Bethel Land Use Department 203-794-8578 or landuse@bethel-ct.gov. Dated this 10th day of January at Bethel, Connecticut by Patrick Parafort, Inland Wetlands Commission Chair.
Very good. And I'll have you read in the public notice here as well. 1 second, please. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Not a problem. To appear on www.bethel-ct.gov, January 11th through 24th, 2022. Public notice, the Bethel Inland Wetland Commission will hold a public hearing on January 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. via Zoom, web-based video conferencing to hear the following. Upstream Properties 2 LLC, number 48 Stony Hill Road, regulated activities. You can use the hyperlink information below to join the meeting. https://web.zoom.us/j//864-846-43212. Meeting ID 864-846-43212. And one tap mobile device access is 1-646-558-8656 or 864 and then 864-846-43212 #. Proposed regulated activities include the construction of 5 buildings, rain-guarded areas, parking areas, and associated site improvements within a 100-foot regulated upland review area. The application is available for review with the following Google Drive hyperlink.
No need to read that.
Okay, thank you. At this public hearing, interested persons will be heard in written communication accepted. This property can be found in the tax assessor's records as map 71, block 110, lot 26, dated this 10th day of January at Bethel, Connecticut, signed Patrick Parafort, Inland Wetlands Commission Chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a public hearing. So the way this will work is we will hear, and Dave, keep me honest here, we will hear from the applicant first, let them do the presentation. Then if the commission members have any questions, and then we will hear from the public if they have any questions or concerns as well.
That's correct. And I'll fit in between the commissioner questions and the public comment with my own comments.
Okay. All right, so, and I apologize, there you are, Mr. Olson. I believe you're up then.
Thank you, Pat. Good evening. My name is Peter Olson. I'm an attorney with an office here in Bethel at 275 Greenwood Avenue. My firm name is Land Use and Conservation Counsel. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, who is the property owner as well, Upstream Properties 2 LLC. And they are represented in our audience tonight by Gary Michael Sr., Gary Michael Jr., Bob Gleason, and Rich Mancuso. We also have with us members of our design team, Rock Emond and Matt Sanford, and they'll do the bulk of the presentation once I turn it over to them. Those of you who have lived in Bethel for at least 10 years will remember that this property at 48 Stony Hill Road is the former Stony Hill Inn. It had a banquet facility, a restaurant, and a number of small cottages that were ringed around the pond. About 10 years ago, the Rubino family started the process of, and a golf driving range. I guess that's probably the biggest bit on the property. About 10 years ago, the Rubino family started the process of redevelopment. And this is the last piece of that property to be redeveloped. You see out there, the Maplewood Assisted Living Facility was the first piece to get developed, following by the Copper Square development with both the townhome units and the duplex units. And then a practice field for the town was donated by the Rubinos in the rear, and the town built that field and parking area in the back there. This last piece, the front piece, was actually approved at the same time as the Copper Square development was approved. It was approved for a commercial residential mix, just as is proposed here, although there was significantly more commercial square footage that was approved as part of that. It had 4 buildings, 2 of which had commercial on the ground floor and residential up above. There was a bank and a large restaurant building proposed sort of on the front looking out over the pond. Unfortunately, due to market conditions, that development was never brought to fruition. The Rubinos were primarily interested in having somebody else build it, and were never able to find the right person. So it's lain fallow just as a paved parking area. When Copper Square was built, a number of infrastructure improvements were made to facilitate a future development here. So you see sidewalks, you see street trees, a lot of the stormwater management system was put in. And so the bare bones of a project are in at the site. We've reworked the site to a development program that we think is functional and will allow the site to finally be brought to fruition. Before I turn it over to Rock Emond to take you through the project, I know he was at the site walk that you held on the 15th. So he'll hopefully answer some of the questions you had then. I do want to note we sent notices of this public hearing out on January 12th. The service that I use doesn't apparently provide a certification of that, but I will provide for the record a copy of the letter and the receipt for that mailing that was done. The last thing to note is in the staff report, there were some comments regarding the validity of the original wetlands report, the soils report that was prepared in 2012 and formed the basis for the design at that time, as well as the approval issued by this commission. I've located that report and scanned it in, and we'll provide that to the record tomorrow. But we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rock. If you could allow him to share his screen and take it away, Rock.
Beautiful.
Screen sharing.
My name is Rock Emmon. I am a associate civil engineer with SLR International Corporation out of Cheshire, Connecticut. We're located at 99 Realty Drive in Cheshire, and we are a worldwide firm. Flashy, fun stuff. Let's see. Just confirm, I'm sharing my screen. At this location, it's 48 Stony Hill Road. This is basically an existing aerial of what we kind of see today. Just to give you some orientation, north is up. Copper Square is located to the north. To the east is the wetland corridor, which is kind of the man-made drainage ditch that we'll be discussing this evening as being with our activities within the upland review. Going south, we have Stony Hill Road, aka Route 6. And then to the west, we have the existing man-made drainage pond, which serves the Copper Square parcel. Just hop around. As part of our proposal, we are looking to build 5 buildings. They're situated kind of in a clockwise fashion going around the parcel. Specifically in regards to this application, the areas within the upland review are about a quarter of the what I'm going to call building B. I actually apologize. I believe that's building C, which is the L-shaped building, and building D, about half of that building is the within the upland review. So that's located here as well as here. With those buildings, there are improvements such as the parking that is located towards the wetland corridor, aka the man-made ditch. And we are proposing that there be parallel spaces along this corridor edge, roughly between about 10 to 5 feet away from the edge of the actual flagged wetland. And I have Matt Sanford here, who is going to discuss the actual wetland flagging itself. But I'll hop around and go through the plans themselves. Let me just zoom out a little bit. It's a little cleaner document than that. So as I was saying, building C, the L-shaped building, there's probably about a quarter to about 30% of the building is within the upland review, within your regulatory area. Also within there are a few parallel spaces going along the corridor, as well as some perpendicular spaces to serve that building or these buildings. Additionally, with that, building D has about half that building within the upland review. And then as we go down towards the south, towards Route 6, we are proposing a water quality basin on that corner. Now, I will bring up the previously approved plan to kind of give you some guidance as to why we kind of anchored these parcels or these areas to where it's going, because we kind of use that as a format for how we're going to be developing this particular site, because if it was approved then, it should be approved now. Just to kind of highlight the upland review as well as the man-made ditch. So the man-made ditch is in blue, going north to south. You can see that there's what I'm going to be calling edge of pavement and the edge of curb line going along the corridor, that we're kind of trying to make sure that we're meeting existing grade. That way the disturbance is actually moderately within the bounds of the edge of pavement. So once again, that grading and that drainage and those utilities will be within the upland review, but nothing will be actually constructed near or close enough to be constructed towards the drainage ditch for it to be considered a wetland impact. Previously, I believe there was a a sanitary main that was installed as part of the town that also bisected the property. Now, during our sidewalk, I kind of alluded to that, but during right here, if I could, I guess I can cancel and kind of draw where that is. It is on the plans, but it's a little easier. You can, it's designated by the sand line type, but essentially it's very close to the wetlands. And we kind of use that as guidance for basically not going that way. All right, maybe that's not as clean as I thought it was going to be. But essentially it's going parallel to the wetland or to the parallel towards the drainage ditch. And it is a previously disturbed area, as well as this is also a electrical easement for CLMP, Eversource, and it has also created some disturbance within this area. Going to the, if I was out this, click. Going towards the approved plans, you can see this is almost kind of the same scenario. They have parking located adjacent to the man-made ditch. There is some building which is associated with their original development that is within the upland review. And then also anchoring the corner is the water quality basin. So we're really taking cues from this particular project with ours, specifically small elements that are kind of those big gravitas items that kind of make sense to use within both developments, and incorporated them into our particular development as well. Once again, so technically, in order for us to kind of build this area, we have to have a robust sediment erosion control plan. And what we're doing along the corridor is basically doubling up on anything that could kind of go towards here. So what we're proposing are a drainage system that is taking water away from going towards the wetland, and then we'll go to the water quality basin. These specific drainage structures will have inlet protection that'll take out any sediments and kind of make sure that it's not going into anywhere that it's not supposed to be going. Additionally, with that, we're going to be putting in silt fence adjacent to the development. And just because we are located within the upland review, we typically also double that up with either a straw wattle or a hay bale to kind of filter out any sort of material that should be going out. In this particular instance, we are technically meeting grade, and it's really my professional opinion that we're not going to be experiencing that much erosion in this particular area because we're going to be meeting existing grades. So these measures for the sediment erosion control are in fact, kind of the belt and suspenders approach. Additionally, with that, we're trying to minimize the amount of actual disturbance along that area. So currently we're not showing any new plantings along that edge because it seems to be a pretty well-defined edge. As you noticed on the site walk, there really doesn't seem to be that many shrubs, but there seem to be some larger trees that we kind of want to hold on this edge to kind of give us that buffer. And what will happen is either the commission could ask for specific plantings along this edge, or we can just leave it as is, and it can be just an area of non-disturbance, and we can call it a day. Additionally, with that, I just wanted to use one photo to give some more context. So this is a photo from 2009, an aerial photo that shows the development prior to Copper Square actually being developed. And you can see that there is a building that is located very close to the drainage ditch, as well as there is associated parking with that, which you can see on the current photo or the current aerial as being where they had actually demoed those areas. And as you can plainly notice, these disturbed areas, the redevelopment would be very beneficial for everyone. To talk about the wetland and the man-made drainage ditch, Matt Sanford is on. So if you want to spin away, Matt.
All right, good evening. For the record, it's Matthew Sanford, professional wetland scientist, registered soil scientist with SLR. So I got involved with this particular project to actually assess the existing wetland features on site and to look at the potential impacts of a redevelopment of the site. And at the same time, obviously conduct a site walk to verify that the existing drainage ditch that's been referred to in the presentation, as well as the existing man-made pond, are still in existence and at the same location as depicted on the plans. As you heard a little earlier, there will be a report submitted that was completed in 2012 by Jim McManus. He's another professional certified soil scientist. That report will be placed on the record to represent the qualifications of the delineation of this particular site, as well as the larger 32-acre site that was originally done in 2012. So based on my site walk that I completed on December 13th of 2021, so just last month, I found that the delineation as conducted in 2011 is still valid and accurate. And the resource areas that were identified in that report, specifically what Jim had referred to as Wetland Series A, is the eastern drainage ditch / Intermittent Watercourse that's located on the eastern property line, as well as the existing man-made pond to the west, which is off of our particular site of proposed development. So those are the two resource areas that I was looking at to evaluate for impacts. I'll talk a little bit about the intermittent watercourse drainage ditch first. So that drainage ditch is obviously, as probably many of you saw on the site walk, it's apparent that it's man-made. Reasons why it's man-made, or the reasons why we define it as a man-made drainage ditch, is if you're out there, you'll notice specifically along the western edge of the drainage ditch, it has a very abrupt bank. That's very unusual for a watercourse. That abrupt bank is usually formed by potentially two methods. One would be the filling along the bank to create this abrupt drop off, or second, typically through excavation. So taking an excavator and moving along in a straight line, you create this abrupt bank on the western side of the drainage ditch. In addition, you'll notice if you're out there, there was evidence of what looked like at one time there could have been pipes that, or pump chambers that were put in this drainage ditch to drain it at some point in time. Those there's one corrugated plastic pipe, about 12-inch diameter, that's located right in the center of the channel. Again, that typically gives me ideas or indications that at some point to control water during some type of construction process, they likely pumped water from this particular intermittent watercourse drainage ditch. The drainage ditch itself is primarily fed through groundwater discharge. I don't know if the commission had an opportunity to see, but the residential units located east off of our property, specifically on Old Hollyville Road, at the base or at the rear of their properties, where there's lawn as well as wooded areas, as shown on this aerial imagery, there is evidence of groundwater breakout that moves from east to west into and discharges eventually into the intermittent watercourse / drainage ditch. In addition, just above the Mountain Laurel Plaza, along its northwest corner, there's a man-made pond. Also, that discharges surface water during larger storm events into this drainage ditch that flows obviously from north to south, eventually crossing under Stony Hill Road and discharging into what we believe is a tributary of Dibley's Brook, which is located on the south side of Route 6. As has been described, the drainage ditch itself is about 2 to 3 foot wide. It is vegetated with a variety of shrubs and trees. And those are all identified in my impact assessment report that was submitted as part of the record. So that describes the drainage ditch under existing conditions. I will now describe the existing pond to the west. This is a man-made pond, presumably made probably somewhere in the 60s and 70s. maybe part of the original development that was here. The pond is, for all intents and purposes, very shaped, or uniquely shaped in terms of looking man-made. It's got a buffer, let's say, of lawn, of ornamental trees. Yeah, there's a pool to the north of it, as well as the copper square buildings. It primarily is fed through obviously groundwater that percolates up from the adjacent uplands, as well as stormwater runoff and surface land runoff from the surrounding areas. It is eventually discharged to an outlet structure and flows south, and basically is the headwater or the feeder for Dibble's Brook, which obviously flows under Route 6 and flows south. From an impact assessment, we'll talk about the drainage ditch first. As Rock has indicated, we are looking to maintain that existing vegetated corridor or shoreline or bank of the drainage ditch. There's a series of small trees as well as shrubs that are currently stabilizing that bank. The project proposes to maintain that vegetation, again, to stabilize that bank. Secondly, as part of the project, stormwater that will be generated from the new development, from the buildings and from the parking lot, are going to be going through a system of treatment systems, and Rock explained those as part of his presentation, and they're shown here. A series of catch basins with deep sumps. We're using curbing to make sure that the water is contained and directed to those catch basins. This is specifically, I'm right now talking about the eastern part of the site, and eventually that water that gets conveyed and collected in those catch basins will go into a vegetated stormwater basin located in the southeast corner. In addition to that, to protect the water quality within the man-made pond, there's a series of subsurface drainage detention systems that'll be collecting the western part of the site. And all that water will be directed again back into our stormwater basin for final treatment. So we're maintaining and protecting water quality of both the drainage ditch and Intermittent Watercourse, as well as the stormwater pond. In terms of functions and values, I think really the focus for functions and values when I evaluate these is to look at, where do these systems fall within the watershed? What's the complexity of these watercourses and wetlands? And in this case, we have a drainage ditch and intermittent watercourse. And so from my perspective, given the size of this intermittent watercourse drainage ditch and where it is in relation to its proximity to other wetlands and watercourses, and where it is in the watershed, is really twofold. First of all, it's really, there's groundwater discharge, obviously, that feeds it. So it's providing a groundwater discharge that eventually gets picked up in the channel itself and then conveyed under Route 6. But secondly, really stormwater conveyance is another important aspect of this drainage ditch, is to collect not only the groundwater that comes up out of the ground, but also any stormwater runoff that comes from the adjacent uplands and convey it to the south and under the culvert. So in that regards, in terms of function values, we're protecting those function values. We're not changing those functions and values. And that's really important when you're analyzing the impacts on a resource. The pond itself, to the west, in terms of functions and values, obviously it provides some aquatic habitat for fishery resources and likely some frogs and turtles, etc. It also, provides some nutrient retention. If you've seen some photos, some aerial photos, historic aerial photos, you notice that there is at times during the summer green algae on it. So we know that it's doing its job of collecting nutrients, probably from the surrounding grassed areas that are around it, and obviously absorbing that and treating that and using that as a nutrient retention system. Overall, based on the development, proposed development, based on the measures that are in place, including the sediment erosion control that Rock talked about, as well as our stormwater management system, it's in my professional opinion that the activities as proposed will not have any significant adverse impact to either the drainage ditch intermittent watercourse located on the eastern portion of the property and or the existing man-made pond located west off of the property. And with that, I think Rock and I would be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have at this time.
I will just interject real quick. Rock Emmon once again. We were in receipt of some town comments, some staff comments. We are in the middle of also revising the plans and awaiting the engineer report or the engineering comments from Wright Pierce. So those with those forthcoming, there will be some revisions to the plans. We don't expect anything significant at this time. And then I'll pass it over to Peter. Peter, you are muted.
Thanks, Rock and Matt. I just want to add one bit from my knowledge from doing the development in 2013 is the man-made pond on the adjacent property was in existence at that time, but it was significantly revised, i.e. expanded and measured in excruciating detail to make sure that it could handle all of the runoff from both Copper Square and the development of parcel B1. And so those discharges were designed in 2013 to go in that expanded pond. Rock, you can take a look at those plans, prior to the next meeting, just to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. But
yep, no. So just to be completely clear and on the record, we are not utilizing the existing pond to the west for our stormwater whatsoever. We are using the water quality basin that anchors the corner, as well as the 2 underground detentions. That way we can be hydraulically kind of disconnected from that system. And then ultimately when it goes to the brook to the south, that's when they come together. And that's where we were showing a 0 net increase to the amount of runoff for the particular site.
great. Thanks, Rock. You hit on we're still waiting for engineering comments point. So at this point, we'll wrap up for tonight. Obviously, we're expecting to come back for another night, but happy to answer any questions the commission has at this time.
Great, thank you. At this time, are there any questions from the commission members?
One thing, yes, hi, Kevin.
And Kevin, I believe you have to state your name each time you talk. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, indeed. Kevin Seaman, Inland Wetland Commission. Apologies, Zoom meeting as opposed to real meeting had me a little thrown off. I did the site walk with everyone last week, and I looked at it again secondarily in conjunction with the plans. When we walked past the south corner to where the retention pond would be, where you're going to deposit a lot of the flow off from the water and drainage, everything looks good that ran alongside the wetlands area. My question is how do we know that there won't be any seepage issues, overflow issues, or issues that would, I guess the question is seepage, because I know that you have all of the numbers for the quantity of water that might fill the retention pond, but the soil that is between the retention pond and the wetlands area, was that taken into consideration to make sure that there would be no seepage from that pond, that retention pond, into the wetlands area?
Just a quick question. Are we going to be doing answers at the end of the questions, or can I answer them as they come up?
Go ahead,
Dave.
Matt.
I would speak. Go ahead, Dave.
I would have all the commissioners ask all their questions that they have, and then you can answer them one by one.
Got it.
Okay, any other commission members have any questions? Danielle?
Hi, you had mentioned putting hay in certain places, and I was hoping that maybe you could elaborate a little bit on where the hay was going and some more details on what its function will be, as well as the longevity of it.
Yes.
And if there's a plan to need to replace it, should it deteriorate over time?
Yep,
thank you.
I can answer that.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission members?
I would go through them individually to see if they have any questions. So we've got Kevin and Danielle that have already asked questions. So Nico, yourself, and Laura and Pat Seller left. Pat.
All right, Nico, I'll put you on the spot first. Any questions?
I got one. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Pat. Nico Jordan, Inland Wetlands Commission, Town of Bethel. And just as far as the site plan goes, guys, Rock, I was wondering like how close again, if you could reiterate, is the parking area to the drainage ditch? And so we're not having them answer these questions right now. So my question is, yes, how close is it? And then concern is potential damage to existing root systems and kind of what and how many trees are there. I know we did the site walk. Want to kind of revisit that. And if the answer is it's close enough that it could damage the root systems, maybe we do invite some landscape plantings of native plantings along the wetlands corridor there after construction to make sure that there's a, you know, continuing vegetative buffer, whatever we have, like within, again, how close is it? How close is the construction? Well within the 100-foot upland review area. Anyway, we'll come back.
Thanks, Nico.
thank
Dave, I'm going to change things up a little bit here. Applicant, why don't you answer the questions that have been answered, and then we'll go and ask and answer, because I think that'll that may cause some conversation or follow-up questions from the people asking it.
Let's answer them as they come along.
Yeah, so why don't you
That's not
start
a
with the
problem.
first one, and we'll catch up and then go individually.
That's what I was trying to express, Pat.
Oh, thank you.
Have all the commissioners ask their questions, and then Rock provides answers to each.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood.
okay.
So,
No worries.
why don't you go ahead and answer the questions you have in front of you already, and then we'll go separately.
Yeah, not a problem. So the first one was Kevin. Your CPIS question. So a water quality basin in this particular instance, due to the nature of water quality and it being a basin, yes, there will be infiltration that occurs as water is deposited into the basin itself. Now, because water tends to go at a 1-to-1 slope as it kind of permeates into the surrounding soils, that water would actually be considered clean water, and then will actually be performing the function of groundwater recharge. Now, as Matt alluded to previously, the ditch itself is actually performing that function as it is today, where water is actually seeping into the ground and eventually hydraulically moving under the soil into the drainage ditch as it goes north to south. So it's essentially doing the exact same thing, but in this particular instance, what we're doing is we're creating a area where the water can be stored, and then as it goes up and has more volume, it allows for it to become still water, and then sediment and solids actually flow down to the bottom. So eventually they'll have to be cleaning the basin, or because there are deep sumps, hopefully there's not any larger sediments that are going through. But essentially what's happening is it's stilling the water for it to kind of dissipate. So it's, to answer the seepage question, it's essentially doing the exact same function as it would be today. Do you have a follow-up question, or is this pretty good?
No, understood.
Beautiful.
Understood and thank you.
Not a problem. All right, Danielle, hay bales. So a hay bale,
Hello?
I don't, hopefully
Hello.
you can, hello. All right,
Good,
cool.
Rock, sorry.
Not a problem. So for erosion control standpoint, there's a silt fence, which is let's say 2 stakes and a filter fabric of plastic material. What we're proposing to do is put a hay bale behind it, so that way if any water were to be going overland through and filtering through the silt fence, that there's a secondary purpose and a secondary filter that'll then go towards the drainage ditch. Essentially, because it's a hay bale, you could technically allow it to maintain forever, because eventually it's going to just dissipate and kind of become compost eventually. But typically what happens is at the end of the project, it'll be removed, and that way you don't see a hay bale in the middle of nowhere. Now, during construction, if there is a hay bale or a silt fence that is damaged, typically that is repaired, and any sort of breakage or accumulated sediment is taken out on a particular basis, which is actually denoted on sheet SE2, which gives us the specifications for how often they are maintaining the silt fence as well as the hay bales.
So are you saying that it's a mechanical filtration that's putting,
Correct.
and it's in place just for the construction process, and after
Yes.
everything has been
After it's
constructed-
over, it's thrown away, burned, whatever they want to do with it.
Gotcha. Or
That
it
way
can
it's a
be-
nice, clean, consistent
Okay.
lawn in between. Correct.
But it's not intended for long-term. It's strictly
No,
intended
No,
to
it's
maintain.
just
for the-
temporary measure. Correct.
Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. All right, Nico,
Hey,
while you were asking your question, I was actually given the availability to jump into the CAD drawing and confirm. The closest point is about 3.5 feet, which is only one parking space, and then it tapers off to about 5, and then we're about 10 feet the rest of the way.
yeah. So in the construction of a parking area, I assume, but there's heavy digging going on? Excavating?
So in the area where there would be heavy digging is actually where the 2 basins would be, because so what's happening is you have a catch basin that has a 4-foot sump onto it. So you're essentially digging about 6 feet down, and that would be the major excavation. Now for parking, you're only looking at a pavement section, which is about 3 feet. You know, that's a typical average pavement section. I believe there's actually a detail on sheet SD1, which shows the pavement section, and I can actually grab that and just give you the actual depth.
I'm
would
looking
be
at
consistent.
one of your site maps. Is it I don't know which one, Stony Hill Inn mixed use development?
Yep.
SLR,
That's me.
project site vicinity map.
If you look at, so there are detail sheets,
Yeah,
which basically show what's happening during construction. And there's
Okay.
specifically a bituminous concrete section, which is,
okay.
let's just do the math real quick. 3 + 8 + 10, we're looking at about 21 inches. So there's an excavation of about 21 inches along so only about 2 feet, we'll say, along the pavement section, or the edge of pavement in that area.
So what do you guys think? I mean, from a botanical perspective, like that's enough to, damage whatever roots are there.
Oh, yes, yes. So if there is a tree that would be damaged by the root system or by the construction, essentially we would need to either replace it in kind, or we would have to have this like a bank of, we can have so many plantings along this edge. If we need to do a site plan modification at the time, we would humbly come back to the commission and be like, okay, one of them is not bad. It's kind of going a little further away than we originally anticipated. We could have that conversation, or we could have the conversation with the town staff, and they could give us some sort of guidance or administrative approval on that.
Okay, so would we do it with like your landscaper and like go through tree by tree on that?
I wouldn't necessarily think that it would
area?
be that in depth. I would say that during construction, there's usually a pre-construction meeting with town staff. Town staff can kind of do that meeting, and then if they have any red flags, they can come back to the commission if they so need to.
So there is further opportunity to revisit that boundary.
Additionally, with that, we are definitely coming back to a public hearing. And what I can do is I can get with my landscape architect, and we can give you some options.
That would be cool. I think, that probably would be a good thing.
Sure.
If you think. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, no worries.
Awesome.
Okay, Laura, you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I'm okay.
Great. Pat, any questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, I think that was everyone but myself. So just a couple questions.
Sure.
Mr. Olson, refresh me. Is this
Yeah.
residential or mainly commercial? Or if the applicant tell me.
It's a mixed project. That's one of the conditions of the planning and zoning overlay zone that was approved.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It has 137 residential units.
Okay.
Located across 3 buildings. And then it has 2 commercial buildings that are located along Route 6 that also have some residential units in them, small number.
Okay, and is this together with and I'm sorry, I can't remember the units in the back. Who owns that? Is it one owner or is it 2?
They're completely separate.
Okay,
Copper Square is a completed development. It's a condominium complex. So those are individual unit owners.
okay, thank you. So on the north side, there's detention basins there that the property line goes, it does it go into it or is it right on it? And is there any sharing of that detention basin or is it still totally separate?
Let me have
Yep.
Rock pull up that plan.
Yep.
If
Not
you
a
can get
problem.
the ability to share.
And then
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
I can explain, let's see, I can bring up the actual plan. Let's see, share screen, share screen. Just let me know when I'm starting to share.
I see it now.
Beautiful. So existing conditions. Let me just hop over there real quick. I guess you can't really see them too well, but there are 2 detention basins that straddle the property line. They actually bisected essentially by the property line. And
Right.
one of the things we're trying to do is kind of segment the 2 properties. That way they're not affecting us, we aren't affecting them. So what's happening is we are essentially just regrading those basins in that area to essentially match the volume that they originally got approved for. And in doing so, we are actually giving them additional volume because we're taking it out of our own property.
So, all right, hold on. You're regrading those detention basins that's affecting the owners of a neighbor's property. Is that correct?
There are
Correct.
easements in.
There are
place
drainage
that allow
easements
that.
between the 2 properties, yes.
Okay, and help me understand why you're doing that. So right now it's designed to handle the flow from what was it, Copper Square?
Yes. So essentially the 2 basins are modeled to handle both the original approved development on our parcel, as well as these 2 buildings along Copper Square.
Okay.
And by kind of disconnecting them because of the way that we've done the site design, especially with the parking, we kind of want to bisect all that. That way it's a lot easier in the long run because they eventually discharge into the pond.
Right.
And we essentially don't want to hydraulically model the pond to make sure everything works that way. So if we were to just disconnect them all, then everybody's happy.
So you're basically gonna make those detention basins smaller and you're not putting anything into it.
I'm not making them smaller. I am matching the existing volume by regrading.
All right, so this is where I'm getting confused. You're matching the existing by regrading. If it's existing, why are we regrading?
So I guess this is the nuance. So my edge of parking and my development is essentially pushing the grade into the edge of the property along this property line. In order for the parking to be installed, there would need to be regrading as it is. Now,
Okay.
in order to just be a good neighbor and to utilize the drainage easement as itself, what we're doing is we're allowing them to, well, I guess allowing them isn't the right term, but we are regrading it to match what was there
Good.
previously from a water volume standpoint.
Understood. All right, now I understand. So, 2 more questions on that, sorry.
Not a
So
problem.
the drainage pipe that I see there now
Yes.
is not going into those detention basins at all.
So there is a drainage pipe that goes along the property line
Yep.
because we are essentially holding that on our property because that's a deeper structure. So to minimize the amount of, I guess, back and forth, we're keeping it on our property.
Okay.
And that eventually gets to the existing discharge to the pond.
Okay. All right, so David, this has been submitted to our engineers to look at that as well, correct?
That's correct. We are still
Okay.
waiting on their, the review comments.
Okay. There's a couple more questions and I apologize. So,
No worries.
do you have on the plans, the actual plans for your electrical and sewer work where the mains are coming in?
So I do have for sewer work.
Yep.
I'm not an electrical engineer, so I don't typically show how the electrical works. But
Alright, so-
essentially what's happening for the sanitary is, so there's a pump station that's located along Route 6. Everything from Copper Square, as well as our development, eventually goes there. And what we're doing is, because the actual sanitary from Copper Square bisects through our property, we're rerouting that as well as tying into it. So because the actual pump station and the public utilities are public utilities, after we receive P&Z approval, we will be going to the PUC for their approval as well.
All right, so basically the reason I asked, if I understand correctly, next to the drainage that's there now on the east, there's a sewer line and there's aerial electrical there. Are you working, like tying into that, or you're totally away from the wetlands on that part? Or are you planning on doing work to tie into that sewer and electrical? Do you follow me?
Sorry, I was asking if I was clear. Electrically, I don't have an answer for that because
Okay.
once again, I'm not an electrical engineer. I
Yep.
can do some due diligence and get you an answer next time.
That'd be great.
But we're essentially, I guess if you look at the plan, once we get off property to this connection, that's as far as we're going to go with the sanitary.
That's your sewer line. So you're not tying
Correct.
into the sewer line that runs along the drain?
No,
Okay.
it's on the, I guess the northern side of the property. We're not along this drainage ditch. No, we're not tying.
Okay.
Well, let me take that back. There are
Okay.
there are two laterals. So we have one connection going to this manhole here for building D, as well as this connection for building C. So I misspoke. We do have connections to that sanitary line that eventually goes to Route 6.
Well, yeah, we're talking, all right, you're talking manhole, so we're talking sewer, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you do have two connections in the wetlands then?
No,
That's
they're on
away
our
from
property
shore.
off the wetland.
Okay, how far off the wetlands are you with those two tie-ins?
Let's see. Let's measure.
Because I believe it's laid right next to it.
Those are existing, right, Rock?
Yeah, these are existing as well. So we're literally just going to the existing manhole. Come on.
Okay. Oh, so the manhole's there already that you're tying?
Yes,
in, so you're
correct.
not- All right.
So if
you're
you
not
look at here, this is
disturbing.
the manhole. This edge right here is
Yep.
the wetland.
Yep, okay.
So it, unfortunately, it won't let me measure. That's definitely not 15. Let me just hop in here real quick and I'll get you an actual number. Let's see, the manhole is about 10.5 feet away from the wetland.
Okay, I would just ask on those two manholes, we make sure there's some type of indication not to go farther in. I don't know
Sure.
how far down you have to go for the sanitary line. I'm assuming, I mean, it's pretty much flat there, so it'd probably be only a couple feet, but I don't know how deep how deep it is. I would just ask in
So
the.
the manhole invert is 5 feet below existing
Okay.
grade. So
Right, so
that,
it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I would just ask because you'll probably have a machine in there, some type of fencing on the east side between
Yep.
the wetland and thing, just keep the backhoe operator aware.
understood.
Okay, the reason I asked about it was commercial residential. There's a pool on the plans there.
Yes, correct.
I'm not too familiar with pools, but I believe there's a clean out in the pool that discharges. Is that correct?
So
if so,
there,
what is the
it
discharge?
depends on, apologies for, if you want to finish your sentence, sorry.
No, I keep interrupting you, so.
Oh.
go ahead.
Oh, so so depending upon the pool and the owner, they can do one of two things. They can either have it pumped whenever they want, or they can have the clean out and the overflow. Those are typically items that we kind of figure out during the CDs phase, so the construction documents phase. But in this particular instance, I would assume that there's either going to be, because you really don't have enough distance to want to pump it, you probably will have that overflow, and that will probably be routed around the building, either to this sanitary or to the sanitary, which is actually a little bit easier to get to, which is the rerouting, which will go to the pump station.
So sanitary meaning sewer, not rainwater.
Yes, sanitary means sewer, not rainwater.
Yep, just want to be
So it
clear.
would probably end up looking something like this, where there'd be a clean out to
Yep.
grade here, and then it would
Okay.
tie in right there. Yep.
All right, and could we just confirm that in the next meeting?
Yes, I can confirm that with the owner on what they want to do with the pool discharge.
Okay, what was it all designed for, the weather event, like, and I'm trying to think of
100-year storm is
100-year
typically
storm.
what we're doing, especially so what we're going to need to do is, as part of further approvals, is we're going to have to go to OSTA. So as well as we're technically tying into a state drainage system.
Yep.
So usually if you go to the higher storms, you look better on the end. So we're trying to show that there's a zero net increase at any connection towards the state system, which
Okay.
is usually a good thumbs up.
Okay. The system on the east side, that's a detention basin, or
This is just for water quality.
Okay.
It technically will infiltrate, but there's a high level overflow where it's technically not fully a detention system, because a detention system implies that we're holding back flow
Right.
purposefully. This is really just so water settles out. It's providing water quality. Eventually it then overflows and goes to the two other underground detentions, and actually through a hydrodynamic separator, which further cleans and polishes the water.
so it's not a controlled release, it's just an overflow release if it gets that
Correct.
high. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I was gonna ask for a crossing in that, but it's just straightforward. And I'm sorry, a bunch of questions. Can you
Yeah.
go over to the pond on the west?
Yes.
Thing that confused me, you're not draining into the pond,
No.
but you have a outlet there, I believe.
So there's what's called an outlet control structure
Okay.
located at the pond. This eventually makes its way to the brook to our south. And what's happening is we're going to tie into that overflow,
Okay.
because that can handle our additional flow, because eventually we're showing, if technically we're showing a netting or a net zero at this connection,
Okay.
it should just be sipping water at that point.
Right, so you're tying into the pipe, not the pond. That
Correct.
overflow
Correct.
pipe.
And then that eventually discharges across the street and goes to the brook.
Right, will that affect, and I know if I'm looking there, they got the V for the control outlet.
Yep.
Will that affect any of the calculations for that controlled flow?
No, because what's happening with the outlet control structure is that's all water that is, so when the pond rises up, it eventually gets to the V and then it spits out a little bit of water. So that's all for water coming out of the system. And because the pipes are sloped away from the pond, as long as we are tying in, and technically as long as we are going in the direction of flow, it should all just be flowing outwards.
Okay, one last question. So I'm assuming you're working very closely with neighbors here, this pond, the detention things on the top. I'm just assuming there's a clear definition of who's responsible for what, that sort of stuff down the road, God forbid there's a problem with the pond. It's clearly defined, is that correct?
There's easements in place, Pat,
Okay, perfect.
recorded in the land records.
Awesome. Thank you. I do not have any other questions. Thank you. So just one more time to the commission members, or any questions at this time? Okay, at this time, I will open it up to the public. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak for or against this application. The way it'll work is basically you'll ask the question, we'll take note of the questions. Once all the questions by the public are asked, we'll turn it over to the applicant to respond to those questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I apologize. I don't mean to interrupt. I would appreciate being able to offer my comments before we open up to the public.
Oh, absolutely, please.
Okay, thank you, because I think before we get into the public's questions, which I'm sure will be just as good as some of the questions that you guys have asked tonight, I'm hoping to head off and possibly address a couple of things before we get to that point. First is two housekeeping items, the first of which is for Attorney Olson. Attorney Olson, we did in fact get the notice of public hearing notice in the mail today. So we do have that. You're more than welcome to send the certified mail return receipts that go with that. And
what you got, David, was because the town is an abutting property owner.
right. Oh, okay.
That was not submitted for your record.
Oh, okay. Okay. Understood. Thank you. But besides that, my only other housekeeping comment would be I do advise the commission that we continue this public hearing to your next regular meeting 5 Mondays from now, which would be February 28th, as Attorney Olson and some of the other persons who have spoken on behalf of the applicant already commented, as we do not have our engineering review comments from my peers. I do expect those to come in later this week. So some of the questions that I have for Wright Pierce and some of the comments that SLR and their contingent are waiting on, they should have ample time to review Wright Pierce's comments and provide a response in advance of that. And with that being said, a lot of the stuff that we're going into tonight, at least for what I've heard from the commission, it's a lot of minutia. And the minutia is good, but with trying to say minutia as micro or categorizing as micro, I think it's important for the commission to take a step back and remember the macro aspects for this property. As I mentioned, when the commission accepted this application during their special meeting this past December, this is coming before us as a modification to a previous approval. And as I make a comment in the wart review that was sent over to the applicant and which was available in your Google Drive, there, how do I say this? There are a lot of items that you could get into at the minutia level at this point, but you need to remember and focus on the compare and contrast from where we were in 2013, which we've mentioned briefly with that approval, and where we are with what's being presented to you tonight. There's been a brief discussion about the stormwater management system, the regulated upland review area, and items and so on and so forth like that. But without having the comparison to make from what you guys, or not you guys specifically, but what the Inland Wetlands Commission previously approved, there's no context. And that context is vital for you guys to make a decision and say that this modification for approval isn't going to have any more an impact, or isn't going to have any more concern to be raised by your review parameters than what was previously approved. You guys can ask questions about how close the parking lot is going to be to the wetlands to the east. You can ask about the hay bales and whether or not they're going to be temporary or permanent, or where utilities lines are going to go. But the macro questions that you need to remember or keep in mind are, and I'll give a few because I don't want to spend any more time talking than I have to, and I'll give a couple examples, which would be your stormwater management system components. What are they? And how are they different from what was in the previous approval? What do they treat? And how well do they treat what the applicant is designing them to treat? Your drainage watershed areas, yes, the applicant mentions that there's a zero net increase in runoff and that there's the system is designed for a 100-year storm, but you need to review where water on this site is going and how much of it is going where, and compare that to what was previously approved. Other items such as the extent of the activity in your upland review areas. We went into, or the applicant, I should say, went into detail about the activities that are occurring on if I can get my controls to work here. One second, please. Okay. The applicant went into some detail about the upland review area over on this portion of the site. The commission should also consider there's a regulated upland review area on the western side of the site. There was some description made by the applicant about this being a man-made drainage ditch and this being a man-made pond. In the report that the applicant described as being previously produced by Jim McManus, I believe back in 2012, it was mentioned, both are classified as wetlands. So you would have regulated upland review areas for both this system here on the east and both this system here on the west. That is the purview for what you are reviewing. The items here in the middle, i.e. the pool and where things get routed, if it's not impacting your wetland, or if it's not within the regulated upland review area itself, it's beyond your purview. So these areas here are what I would say the commission needs to focus on. I have a laundry list of housekeeping comments that I went into in detail in the WART review, which if you have the time to read it, more power to you. I think it's the comments I think are, I hope they're thorough enough to get through everything that you guys need to make for your decision. But the staff report really gets into the meat and potatoes for what I'm hoping the applicant will have responses for. And they address the questions that I have for, and they refer to the questions that I have for what's going on in this area here and what's going in those areas here. So that's where your focus should be, at least at this time. When we get into further discussion as to the area where your drainage areas encompass, which I would assume would be the whole of the parking lot, but we'll say the discussion for the 28th, and roofing drains and things of that nature. You know, we're just trying, we're sticking to the macro things at this point. And I think it's worth it for the commission to go through everything that the applicant brings us up to speed on, with the stuff that we have from the past and the stuff that's been prepared for you tonight, and the stuff that will come to you in the way of the engineering report later this week. As soon as I have those review comments from my peers, I will be sure to send those to the applicant and to you guys so you can read through them. Otherwise, at this point, I would say the heart of the meat of the discussion we can continue on the 28th. Are there any immediate questions or questions that I can answer right now for the commission? None? Okay. That's all I have for you tonight. Chairman Pat Parafort, if you want to open the floor to the public, thank you for letting me interject there, and you can go forth with public comment at this time.
No, absolutely. And Dave, when are you expecting the engineer's report back so we could actually look at some of those items you mentioned?
At the very latest, they'll be into us you know, at the very latest, they'll be into us early next week, but I'm optimistic that they'll get, the engineering comments will get to us by the end of this week, Friday. That would be the 28th.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so at this time, I'll open it up to the public for any comments and questions they may have. You either need to make yourself known on camera, like raise your hand, or Dave, I believe on the bottom, under reactions, you can raise your hand that way as well.
That's correct.
Okay, so if there's anyone wishing to make comments or questions on this, please make yourself known.
I'm seeing a Seth Davis.
Hi, excuse me. Seth Davis, I reside at 213 Copper Square Drive. I'm the president of the Copper Square Homeowners Association. Just like to briefly, for the record, state that we're delighted to hear that the applicant would like to be good neighbors with us. What I'd like to say for the record, we have had no contact with the applicant. We've not been approached in any way. We have not contributed to these plans or discussed them with them. It's not to cast any aspersions on them, but as Mr. Olson said, there are easements in place and they will remain in effect. But we have no comments on this because we have not had interaction with this or any chance to review it. We're looking forward to the report of the 10 engineers, and will be, I hope, expressing further comments, if any, at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in regard to this application?
I'm not seeing anyone else that has up. There's one right now. And A. Vazell.
Hi, I'm Ann Vizella and I live at 303 Copper Square. This is the first time I'm joining a meeting like this. So is this just pertaining to the wetlands? Or
That's
is
correct.
it the overall project? Okay. Then if it is, I don't have anything right now. Thank you.
Okay, yep, thank you. Yeah, this is pertaining wetlands, and I believe there is, Dave, is there a public hearing for the zoning scheduled?
Yes, I believe the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission's application for activities at this property, that commences on their next meeting or their regular meeting on February 8th.
Okay, and you always go verify that on the town website as well.
That's correct.
Great. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak in regards to this application? Okay. David, this time, and I don't know, Mr. Olson, do you have any comments in regards to Mr. Davis's comment, or I know it was a
No,
general comment, so.
Yeah, we have no further comments at this time.
Okay, all right. So at this time, I'll just check with the committee members again. Any questions? All right, Dave, do we need a motion for extension, or we just move to the next meeting?
There's no motion needed at this time. The commission is still acting within, as this public hearing has just opened up tonight, you guys have a 35-day or a standard 35-day period to review this. So whatever you guys or whatever hasn't been addressed tonight, it can certainly be done so when this continues at your next regular meeting on the 20th of February.
Okay, great. So we're done with this one for tonight till next
Right.
meeting.
Thanks,
Correct.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining the applicant. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so next order of business on the agenda, and Dave, keep me honest here, this would be Mrs. Rubinowitz for Northwest Conservation District.
That's
Please
correct.
go ahead with this presentation.
Yes. Mr. Rabinowitz, are you with us?
You're muted, Mr.
I think I
There you go.
am. I
There you
just
go.
need to get my video on. Oh, no, there we are. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Dave, do I have screen sharing privileges?
Yes, you do.
Okay. But I don't have the slideshow. Oh, there we go. Yeah. All right.
Mr. Rabinowitz,
Yes.
Dave, and I'm sorry, I would not be able to do you justice. Dave, you want to introduce Ms. Rabinowitz and what the Northwest Conservation District is? We have a lot of new members who may not have met Ms. Rabinowitz or worked with her conservation district before.
Sure. I don't want to take away from Ms. Rabinowitz or from Cynthia introducing herself, but just as a brief overview for the new commissioners, Cynthia Rabinowitz, she has served as a peer review consultant out of the Northwest Conservation District, obviously for inland wetlands applications that come before us. All applications big and small. She's helped out with an application as small as the dog park improvements to Bennett and McCower Park, which fingers crossed should be in the paperwork stage at this point. Yes, and applications as large as one similar to the ones that you are in the midst of review tonight. She is a professional wetland scientist and a soil scientist. She acts as an expert for you guys when you need someone with expertise on wetlands matters in further expertise than I can provide. With the Northwest Conservation, the context she serves as in this role for a number of towns in northern Fairfield County and pretty much the lion's share of Litchfield County. So it's an absolute pleasure to have her here tonight and have her give her time to give a presentation on how wetlands and similar functions or similar entities, streams, lakes, and what have you work. I think I'm just rambling at this point. So without further ado, I'll let you have the floor, Cynthia.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction, Dave. That was very special. So yes, Dave asked me if I would cover 4 topics. And okay, so I think I have the slide out of order, but anyway, and obviously nobody wants to be here for a 3-hour lecture or anything like that. So he did give me a time range. It's it's not long enough to do Wetland Science 101, but I am going to cover 4 topics, kind of in a survey format, just to give an introduction to the main issues that I think you would be interested in learning more about. And they are designed to provoke more questions and interest among the commission. I know that you probably, many of you are taking the new deep online course about wetlands, so you're probably getting into the weeds, no pun intended, a little bit, but I would be happy to come back at a future date to address one of these 4 topics in more detail. And so without taking any more time on this, let's get into it. So in addition to my professional background, having been a soil and wetland scientist for 42 years now, and I also love poetry and literature in general. And in my readings, in my lifetime, I've seen a lot of references to yeah, my slides got a little out of order, references in literature to wetlands. So on the left side, there's a list of negative terms which I've seen in various novels and plays in reference to wetlands. In general, many people think of wetlands in a very negative connotation. They are often just thought of as waste grounds. There's just no value to them. On the other hand, I came up with this list of positive attributes. I could come up with a lot more, but just to keep things brief, I think you get the idea here where I'm going. I think wetlands are some of our really beautiful and interesting places to visit. So I'm just going to go back to this slide. I want to show you that in addition to many ecological services or ecosystem services that we get from the natural world, one of those ecosystem services comes from wetlands acting like the Earth's kidneys. Wetlands do clean our water, and in conjunction with the trees, which act as the lungs of the earth, we should have clean water and clean air. So we need to promote protection of wetlands and the trees that grow there and on other types of landscapes. So my first topic is a sort of general introduction to wetlands, which are found at the interface of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. So that means basically between dry land and open water. But there are exceptions to this, which we'll mention. But this example here in this diagram will show you how wetlands relate hydrologically to the terrestrial system shown here on the left, and the deep water aquatic system represented on the right-hand side. So we're looking at a pretty typical hillside here. And of course, this hydrological diagram can apply over the landscape in all different kinds of situations, much steeper than this, almost flat, and everything in between. So we have on the left-hand side the terrestrial area, which is much drier. Rainfall moves down the hillside as stormwater. Some of it does penetrate into the soil and then moves laterally beneath the soil surface, eventually reaching an area on the hillside that is less steep. The slope changes. There may even be a little depression there. Water will start to collect from the runoff on the surface, and also water moving laterally underneath the surface of the soil will pop out. And so this is very typical in our glaciated landscape here in Connecticut and the Northeast in general, because we have such a varied landscape with lots of hills and valleys and depressions in the landscape all over the place. So when somebody tells you, oh no, I have no wetlands on my property, it's a steep hill, they don't know that you can have wetlands right at the top of the hill and on the side slopes. So in the interest of time, we'll move on. I hope that this will be clear to you from this diagram. I did want to show a couple of slides of something particular to Bethel. So the Lime Kiln Brook, which, as you all know, flows through the McCower Park and Bennett Park that Dave referenced, and the Northwest Conservation District, in partnership with the town, is going to do some 3 installations of best management practices to capture and infiltrate water into bioinfiltration structures. We're going to talk about LID, or low impact development, later on in the talk. But anyway, this slide shows the Lime Kiln Brook in the dark blue, and some of the tributaries feeding into it. And it's really important to know where your watershed is and what happens within the watershed. And this next slide shows the Lime Kiln Brook watershed inside the Still River watershed. So as you all know, the Lime Kiln is a tributary of the Still River, which itself is a tributary of the main stem Housatonic. So here we have in red, outlined in red, the Lime Kiln watershed, which we saw in the last slide, and nestled inside the purple line, which represents the Still River regional watershed. So we're building into this. And as you can see now, the Lime Kiln looks very small in relation to the next watershed, the Still River, and minuscule in the Housatonic, which, you know, goes all the way up to Massachusetts and over into New York State here, and eventually to Long Island Sound. So the key thing that I want to impress on you is that going back to the diagram showing the terrestrial, the wetland, and the aquatic systems, every drop of water that lands on any place on the earth is part of a watershed. And the water collects together from the highest, most remotest places and comes together in little intermittent watercourses or all different ways, eventually makes its way to the wetlands and then to the larger aquatic environments like the rivers and eventually, you know, rivers, lakes, and eventually, in our case, Long Island Sound and the open ocean. And so one of the things I try to impress upon people is that everything that we do in our own personal landscape, whether it be outside your back door, on your lawn, et cetera, is going to affect the quality of the water in the watershed. Okay, so I'm sure some of you will have questions, but I think in the interest of time, maybe we should leave them till the end. But if there's a chat room, Dave, maybe people could put questions in the chat room. And then if there isn't time, I can respond at a later date to the questions. Anyway, just a thought.
It's a good thought. The chat room up, I'm sorry.
Okay. So again, here's just a photograph that I took of a wetland area with a beautiful stand of Joe Pye weed at the interface of the dry land, which is basically behind us from the vantage point. And then in the distance here, it's a little misty, but you can see open water here. So a perfect example of what I've been talking about. And then we all know that there are isolated pockets, isolated wetland pockets that don't seem to be between open water and the terrestrial, and they are in fact surrounded by terrestrial areas. So this is an exception to the general rule that if you think in the sense of a watershed, every drop of water eventually makes its way to the big aquatic ecosystems. Now, sometimes these isolated pockets of wetlands can be vernal pools. In this particular case, this one was not. This is an ephemeral pool, but it's not deep enough and doesn't stay wet enough, long enough to host the types of organisms that you find that are obligate in inland wetlands, in vernal pools. It is, however, still a wetland based on the soil type. We also have coastal wetlands. The Connecticut coastline still has a number of beautiful coastal wetlands, and the state, in partnership with some of the towns along the coastline, have been able to restore some of the original salt marsh areas. Here's another diagram for you that I hope will help explain a little bit about how wetlands come into being. And generally speaking, a broad brush approach is to say that without the hydrology, there's no wetlands. So you need the hydrology, you need the water, obviously, to create a wetland environment. But we also need the geomorphology, which refers to the physical shape of the landscape. So going back to the standard diagram with the hillside and the depression, etc., that is a type of geomorphology. What is the shape of the earth? And then also climate. Climate is very important for the development of wetlands and the wetland habitat. Climate, first of all, affects hydrology, and it affects the type of animals and vegetation that grow on the land and also in wetland settings. And here, thirdly, we have the physiochemical environment, which is the soil and the soil chemistry. So this is very important, and I'll show you some pictures of this, but in wetlands, the soil types that we find in wetlands have a different appearance than they do in an upland or terrestrial non-aquatic setting. And this is because of the chemical reaction, oxidation, and reduction that occurs in soils. In an upland soil, the soil is well aerated, well drained, and there's more oxidation going on. In a wetland setting, the water table is fluctuating, or it's at the surface most of the time. And where the water table is high and the soil is flooded, or sometimes we call that inundated, the chemistry changes and we get what's known as reducing conditions. And that's a chemical term for the number of ions that occur on an iron molecule. And when we go, so I do have some slides that are coming up to show you the difference between an oxidized soil and a reduced soil. But it's really based on a chemical reaction. And we know, because of soil scientists over a century ago and through the 20th century doing a lot of research, we know by looking at the soil, we can tell what is happening over the course of a year, year after year, with the water table. And that allows the field soil scientist like me to be able to go out and look at the soils and make a determination as to where the wetlands are based on soil type, regardless of whether it's the middle of summer and no rain has occurred for a few weeks. Okay. So that brings us to how we define wetlands. And there's been so much work on this topic around the world. So we have an international definition of wetlands, which came out of the Ramsar Convention in 1971. I'm not going to go into that definition. It's interesting, but it doesn't really apply specifically here in Connecticut. And we do have the Clean Water Act, which is obviously a United States law. And that law defines wetlands and is under the jurisdiction of the US Fish and Wildlife Service and the Army Corps of Engineers. And that would be when a project is going to be disturbing a certain amount of wetlands, then that kicks it out of the local jurisdiction and adds the federal wetland application, which is rolled into the state general permit. In Connecticut, the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act came into being in 1972, and it's based strictly on soil. And these types of soils, poorly drained, very poorly drained, and alluvial soils are all considered wetlands. And the law also includes watercourses and all water bodies, from intermittent water bodies to large-scale ponds and lakes. Any open water is jurisdictionally under your ruling on the local level by the Inland Wetlands Commission, as you all know. So the federal wetland determination is a little bit different. It requires identifying 3 parameters. So not just soil, but wetlands hydrology and vegetation. Hydrophytic vegetation is vegetation that likes to have its feet wet. So that all is rolled into the federal wetland delineation. Most soil scientists and wetland scientists in Connecticut do both state and federal wetland delineations because they're needed. So it's important to note that not all wetlands are wet all the time. And so it's possible, as I mentioned before, that hydrology may not be present. You may not actually see water at the time of the inspection, which is why I really like the Connecticut determination of wetlands, because of the reasons I described before. The colors and characteristics that we can see in the soil profile at any time of the year indicate what the routine hydrological condition of the soil is. So whether there's ponded water or the hole that you dig fills up with water quickly, or whether it's completely dry, we can still say that for most of the year, the soil has an inundated condition, and therefore it's a wetland. So under the Connecticut wetland definition, just to recap here a little bit, wetlands include all of these different kinds of water bodies. I'm not going to read them all. I'm sure you have this in your regulations, but it includes some things here that maybe you aren't aware of. It includes all of these different areas. It includes drainage systems, surface and underground streams, natural or artificial. Quality or size of the feature is not a consideration, but if it meets any of these criteria, poorly drained, very poorly drained, and alluvial soils, or it's a watercourse, then it's a wetland under Connecticut's laws. And these soils must, in Connecticut, be identified by a soil scientist. And as I said before, the determination is based only on soils. Vegetation's not used as a factor in Connecticut, but in any legal sense. But as a field soil scientist, we often, looking around the area, the property that we're examining, we notice that there are changes in vegetation, and looking at the species that are growing there can give us an indication that the soil is very likely going to be a wetland soil. So here's the first slide of some different soils laid out here. And you can see the difference between this soil, well, all 3 soils are different. This one on the right is an upland soil. It's not a wetland. This one on the left is very definitely a wetland. It has a thicker, darker topsoil, and it has a dark gray and then a lighter gray subsoil. So this is coming from a fairly well-developed, very poorly drained area. This soil here is a little bit borderline. I would call it a wetland. It has some gray in here. There's some mottling in the soils. And so it would be considered a wetland. And here you get a closer view. So this is what we refer to as mottling. I hope that you can see, even in this brighter layer of soil, this horizon, There's some rusty colored patches here, which indicate oxidation of the soil, but right next to them, there's little blobs of gray. And then as we get a little bit deeper into the sample, we're seeing larger areas of gray. So the gray indicates the reduction going on in the soil when the soil is inundated and has high water. So in this soil here, you can see a fairly distinct change from where my cursor is going. Below, it's mostly gray with a few of the oxidized mottles. Above this area, it becomes a little bit brighter. There's more oxidation going on. Some reduction still when the water table comes up. The water table probably comes to about this level on a regular basis every year at some point. And then we have non-hydric soils, which are pretty uniformly brightly colored all the way up and below the topsoil. There's some other lighter colors in here, but these are probably just sandy inclusions and not reflective of the water table. Okay, so that was Soil Science 101 in 10 minutes there. And then we can look at some pretty pictures of wetlands here. But even though I said that in Connecticut, we don't have to actually see the hydrology in order to make a determination of wetlands, obviously at some times of the year, you are going to see wetlands that are inundated. And in this particular case, we have a ponded area that is draining out through this little intermittent watercourse channel, has some trash in it here as well. In this wetland, we're not seeing any open water at all. This might be some in the background here. I can't really quite remember where this was that I took this picture. But what we are seeing are kind of a mound, pit and mound topography in the landscape with trees growing on some hummock areas. And this is definitely a wetland. There's a sharp edge to this wetland where the slope is coming down. There's a clear demarcation between the wetland down here at the lower part of the landscape, and then this hillside, which comes down sharply forms a sharp edge between the upland and the wetland. It isn't usually, or isn't always that easy to see the demarcation. Vegetation, as I said, is only used officially in the federal classification, but it is interesting to learn about different plant species that grow in wetlands. And it's fun to walk through wetlands and see plants that you won't see in the upland or terrestrial areas. Here are two very nice plants, sphagnum moss and sensitive fern, which are common in wetlands. And here's another typical Connecticut inland wetland. This happens to be on my property in Bethlehem. And when my husband and I came to this property in 1980, this was a red maple swamp. You can see that it's ringed around the edges by trees. Well, it was completely forested. And then along came the beavers and dammed up the outlet, which is, I'm standing pretty much on or near the beaver dam to take this picture. And that happened a few years after we came to the property. And the beavers dammed the stream coming out of the wetland. The water table rose, the red maples died, and most of them fell and decomposed. You can still see some skeleton trunks standing here. Actually, the beavers have been gone for quite some time, and this picture was taken a number of years ago. The trees are actually starting to come back in, which is nice to see. This picture was taken at Mohawk State Park. It's the Black Spruce Bog. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it. Wonderful outing. And it's one of my favorite places to go for a picnic. There's a boardwalk that goes right out to the middle of the bog, and you have to stay on it. Shouldn't walk on the surface of the wetland. There are some rare plants out there that are interesting to see. And there's a nice seating area in the middle of the, at the end of the boardwalk, in the middle of the bog, where it's nice to take a picnic and sit there and absorb the atmosphere. And this is a very typical scene in Connecticut inland wetlands as well. Whoops, I seem to be, whoops, I'm going the wrong way here. Sorry about that. Okay, the next topic that I want to touch on is what are the functions and values of wetlands? I referred to ecosystem services earlier on, and so that's just a fancy way of talking about their functions and values. Excuse me. So in this diagram, we can see some of the functions and values listed here. The stream coming into the wetland may often have a high energy, a high flow rate, which can be damaging to the environment. High stream flow causes erosion and cuts into the landscape, and that's a natural process. I mean, the land is naturally eroding over centuries. That's happening, but that's counterbalanced by geological forces which are raising the landscape up at the same time in certain areas. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But on the smaller local level here, we want to try to dissipate or slow down the energy of flow in rivers and streams. And we don't have to do this ourselves because nature does it for us. Water flows through these aquatic systems, the wetlands, where the velocity of flow slows down very quickly and allows sediments and nutrients to filter out into the wetland, and the water will get clean. Also with groundwater flow and the soil that's underneath the wetland helps to break down any excess nutrients and contaminants that end up in the wetland. We have habitat for wildlife and plants, and we have this slow release of stored water into the stream that outlets the wetland. So we have groundwater recharge. When the water enters the wetland, where the velocity slows down to almost, it's an imperceptible flow really in a wetland. Sometimes you get braided watercourses through wetlands where the water keeps moving, but often you will just find standing water that is infiltrating. And that creates an opportunity for the groundwater to be recharged. So the water is being cleaned in the wetland, and this clean water is moving down into the Earth's surface where it recharges our groundwater and helps to provide clean drinking water for all of us. So flood flow alteration is a big deal. Habitat, we mentioned. Sediment and toxicant retention, we mentioned that. Nutrients. Shoreline stabilization is something that happens when the water flow is slowed down. Also, wetlands help to retain carbon dioxide, so they are sinks for carbon. Unfortunately, wetlands can also be sources of carbon, which I'll mention when we get to the climate change section of the talk. I just wanted to throw in a couple of slides showing historical uses of wetlands, because they have been known throughout history as valuable places for human activity. Here are two different examples. Here's one that I find very interesting. I've read quite a lot about this scenario in pre-colonial Mexico City, where there were a lot of wetlands. Ironically, in the colonial era and up till the modern time, most of the wetlands in Mexico City and surrounding areas were filled in and drained so that the city could develop. And unfortunately, they now have a severe water shortage in that area. But this is what the native Mexican peoples did in the area around Mexico City, where the present day Mexico City is. And these are floating organic mats that were used for horticulture and agricultural production. So I think that's really fascinating. And of course, we know about indigenous use of wetlands, and everybody, I believe, knows how wild rice is collected this way. And I'm sure that there were many other uses as well. So moving on to climate change. It's known that wetlands are going to be susceptible to damage from climate change. The shallow wetlands that rely on precipitation will be the most vulnerable to drying. So the Black Spruce Bog, for example, at Mohawk State Park in Goshen, it's on the Goshen-Cornwall line. That is very high up in the landscape, and there's very little water flowing into it. It's a depression in the top of a hill, a steep hill, a mountain really. And the water collects in there because of the bedrock underneath. And there isn't a wide area draining into it. So it will be very vulnerable to changes in climate. Types of changes that we're concerned about for wetland health are changes in temperature, the amount of rainfall, and sea level rise. And temperature will have the effect of changing how much water is retained within wetlands, and will also affect the rate of evapotranspiration from leaves of plants, especially trees, which have such a massive volume of leaf foliage. The rate of transpiration increases when the temperature goes up, and that can have the effect of drawing down the water in a wetland and changing the hydrological nature of a particular wetland. Coastal wetlands are most vulnerable from sea level rise. And this is an interesting statistic here, that a rise of 100 centimeters over 100 years would inundate over half of the world's significant wetlands, and it means coastal wetlands. The types of wetlands that are most vulnerable to temperature changes are the inland wetlands. And this obviously is not Connecticut, but prairie potholes are shallow depressions in, relatively level, not completely flat land, obviously, but in more or less wide spreading areas. And they are very susceptible to drying down. In Connecticut, I think that we're somewhat protected, not wholly, and I don't think the science is in, and I have to confess I'm not a climate scientist by any means, but we do have protection from our trees. The trees cast shade, which help to keep the ground surface cooler, and I'm hopeful that if our forests can stay healthy, our wetlands will be buffered somewhat from the effects, but I don't really know. Anyway, wetlands are significant sources of both sinks of greenhouse gases, methane and carbon, that play an important role in global climate change. But as I mentioned earlier, climate change is expected to increase the loss and degradation of many different kinds of wetlands and the species that rely on them. And okay. So in the northern wetlands, in the tundra regions across northern Canada and Alaska and other northern landscapes around the world, there are large, huge, massive carbon stores in those tundra areas. And what can happen, what is happening at a very alarming rate from what I've read, the permafrost is melting, and the wetlands that are perched on top of the permafrost are drying down. Carbon is being released quickly, and these huge releases of carbon dioxide increase atmospheric warming, which exacerbates climate change and creates a feedback loop, because as the temperatures go up, the permafrost is melting faster and more carbon is being released. Okay, those were just repeated slides. So I'm going on to the final topic of the presentation, low impact development and stormwater management. So I just want to tell you that the 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual, which I have on a shelf above my desk here, is being revised. And I think the new manual will come out later this year, and it will have a much greater focus on LID than the 2004 manual did. So that will be very helpful for everybody in our state, from the engineering profession to those of you who serve on inland wetlands commissions. So the current challenges that we have, we all know that stormwater can be a source of pollution. And here's a typical example of what can happen. Runoff from agricultural and urban, suburban areas are very difficult to control. And historically, we've had the mentality, before we knew better, the way of dealing with it was to pipe it and dump it somewhere else, which hasn't been a very good solution. We do know now that bioinfiltration is a really good way of dealing with and cleaning stormwater. So this happens to be an educational sign that the Conservation District commissioned a few years ago, and we put the signs up on rain gardens that we do in various towns as demonstration projects. Rain gardens take the runoff from any impervious surface, infiltrate the water through soil and roots, and the water goes into the ground, and it's much cleaner. So in a suburban or urban setting, we can apply LID, low impact development, or low impact sustainable development, in many different ways. I just have a few examples here, not too many, but a nice street scene, very aesthetically pleasing. There's a curb cut, which you can see at the lower central part of the slide, allowing water that's flowing down the side of the road to cut through the curbing and enter the rain garden. And there's also a collection area there for the water when it gets too high. And here's another example of that type of structure. And here you can see the old storm drain along the side of the road, which has probably been there a long time. And this rain garden area with the two curb cuts. And here's a simple rain garden, which doesn't involve a curb cut or any kind of a structural dimension. And it's a simple depression created in the Earth's surface. And you can see these are probably volunteers planting a nice garden here so that the stormwater can be cleaned. This is a newly planted rain garden at Booth Free Elementary School in Roxbury. The Conservation District put this garden in November 2021, so it's just gone in, which is why you can't see any plants in it, because the plants were too small, and of course it's the dormant season. But as you can see, there was an existing storm drain. The grass to the right of this area is very steep, actually. You can't really tell because of the perspective of the photograph, it's kind of flattened out, but this rain garden is surrounded on 3 sides by school buildings with this steep grassy area connecting it to the upper building. The roof is all gutted, and you can see the downspout coming into this area. And we have created the rain garden, which is a depressed space, so that the rainwater coming out of the gutter sits in the rain garden and infiltrates. Now, the drain that you see has been there since the school was built and will serve as an overflow if there happens to be an excessive storm with a high amount of rain that falls that is too big for the capacity of this rain garden. It will flow out through the stone line channel and go into the original drainage system. But overall, we will be capturing a lot more of the stormwater. I like to tell the children in schools that when you have a landscape with trees, natural landscape with forests and fields and leaves, the leaves intercept the rain and help to slow it down so that it can go into the ground. But when we build schools and houses and shopping centers, we take the trees down and we have impervious surfaces. So rain gardens are a way of putting some of that back. I wanted to show this slide. This is Common Ground High School in New Haven, which is a wonderful alternative high school where they have a farm, and it's a great place for kids to learn about nature and agriculture and all sorts of interesting things. This rain garden next to their parking area is vegetated with trees and shrubs. Usually you think of rain gardens with herbaceous plants, and that's pretty typical, but there is a place for using trees and shrubs in a rain garden, especially the larger rain gardens. Another place that you can see this is on the university, something like this is on the University of New Haven, West Haven campus, where they have bioinfiltration planted with trees. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope it wasn't too long for this time of night. I didn't realize it was going to get to be so long, so late, but if there are any questions, if you have the energy, I know you have more on your agenda tonight, so I don't want to hold you up.
No, that was very informative. Thank you, Cynthia.
My pleasure. Okay. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome. If there are any questions, you can send them along. Dave can send them along.
Yep.
And
Will do.
okay. I have no idea what time it is. It's 9:05.
Yes.
I know how late inland wetlands meetings go. I've sat through many of them over my career. So I will say good night if I assume you want to go on. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm going to.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Cynthia. That was lovely.
Adios. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
Excellent.
very much, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
Super.
All right, so we
If I can request just a 2-minute recess, Chairman Purfoy, just for a quick break to sit up and stretch, and
Okay.
And then we'll be right back. Can we have a motion for
Right. Do we need a motion for it?
that?
Right.
Just for a recess.
All right, so let's be back at 9:15.
Yes,
Okay, 5 minutes.
thank you. Okay, so we're reconvening at 9:15.
Okay, so going, continue with the agenda. Next order of business is new business. Codfish Hill Road Extension number 28, Dave.
Yeah, Codfish Hill Road, number 28. I'm gonna try to speed run. This is the first of 3 new applications that you guys will be considering for acceptance tonight. Codfish Hill Road, number 28 is the first one, or is the first application of the new year that you guys are considering. It comprises of a new single-family home, access driveway, septic system, and associated improvements, portions of which are within a 100-foot regulated upland review area. Whew, it's getting late. I can try to go into the meat and potatoes of what this application comprises of real quick. But the application, it's pretty straightforward. This is based on a lot from a subdivision that was crafted circa 2003 to 2006. It's finally getting around to being developed. Someone has bought the lot with the intention to construct a single family dwelling on the property. The activities that are associated with this, they're pretty straightforward and boilerplate for what you would otherwise see for a house in an upland area, or one that's out of a regulated area for your purview, for that matter. So, you have the 2 options that you can consider this for review, one of which is your site plan review, which is your expedited review process, so to speak, and then your public hearing process, which is similar to what you guys are underway with for 48 Stony Hill Road. So I leave that decision to you. We have all the materials that we need at this time to review the application either way. I'll ask the applicant, once we get this application accepted, to submit application or materials that were previously approved and previous documents that I think are very helpful context wise. Did everybody get a chance to look at this, or are we all kind of going in this cold feet, so to speak?
I did not get a chance to overview, but I am overviewing right now.
Okay. So I suppose I'll do that with you guys as you're all overlooking on your own here. Let me just pull up the site plan sheet. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so what you have here is, excuse me, I zoomed out a little bit too far. This is the rear portion of the parcel for 28 Codfish Hill Road. Your frontage is going towards the south, where Codfish Hill Road is, somewhere in this direction of my cursor. All your activities that are concerned and what is in the application that entails before you is the driveway, which comes in here, ultimately rounds out to a K-turn and a house here. You have a septic system, leaching galleries here, and the wetland itself, which is right where my cursor is. I don't have the specifics off the top of my head for the area of upland review area that that is being affected by this activity, or the distance for between the closest point for your limit of disturbance and the wetlands itself. But with that in mind, there are no proposed direct impacts to regulated upland wetland, regulated wetlands areas on this property, or at least that's what the application indicates. So whichever way you guys are inclined to accept this, I would be comfortable with. It's pretty straightforward. You guys have successfully handled developments like this via the site plan review process. So if you guys are comfortable doing it that way, I do not want to discourage that by any means, but I leave this ultimately as your choice. Any questions?
Is, you just said there's no real marker to say what's the closest point of contact with the regulated area?
I don't know what the offset is off the top of my head, but all the proposed improvements are shown on the plan. So
Yeah.
you have your reserve area, you have your septic system, leaching galleries, fieldstone splash pads, elements of that nature. So everything that's proposed is here. I just don't have the exact distance that it is closest to the regulated wetlands on site.
David, is there, the rest of the property is down to the left, right? To the west?
Let me zoom into,
Driveway area.
let me show you Bethel GIS here.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on my maps as basically being really close to the East Swamp Brook. The driveway basically like meeting at the East Swamp Brook, essentially almost.
Okay, so if you guys can follow my cursor, I believe this is, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this here is 302. And then you have Wolf Pits, and then where it meets Codfish Hill. And this is the lot in question here, highlighted in red.
Okay.
The zoomed in area that I showed you guys is roughly here where my cursor is. I imagine the applicant will go through all of that, but that kind of gives you some context. Yes, there is a section of a water course that flows through this property. Which one it is off the top of my head, I don't know if it's Lime Kiln or East Swamp. I'm not sure.
This one to your left is East Swamp. That's not named on
Yeah.
my map, but it's looks like one of the principal tributaries into the East Swamp Brook, which feeds
Oh.
into the Wolf Pits Lime Kiln and into the still.
Gotcha. Okay. So that is your rough idea as to where the property is and where the activities are.
So are they going to build the driveway right over? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. So from what I understand, there is an access way that already exists for this lot here, and they would be continuing it so that it also can serve this lot here in red. I'm not sure if this here is to suggest that part of that already exists.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it will route somewhere towards this direction for a single family dwelling to be placed here on this portion of the property.
Dave, so for purposes of tonight, we have to decide to accept the application and if we're doing a public hearing or not, is that correct?
Correct. You have to accept the application, and then you guys would figure out the review process, and then based on the other items that you have to review, we would schedule when we would open the review process for this.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept this application?
I motion to accept the application. Kevin.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? And any abstaining? Okay, Dave, is that sufficient, or do they have to go by roll call?
No, that's sufficient.
All right, so.
Yep.
So it's accepted.
Mary's got a question real quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Mary.
Hi, I didn't hear who seconded it.
Oh, I did. Nico Jordan.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you.
And it was all in favor. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Is there any thoughts on if this needs a site walk or not by the commission? Or I'm sorry,
I
public
don't
hearing.
need a sidewalk. I would definitely be curious to see the layout plan for the driveway. That's
Okay.
the only.
Yep, and
concern.
then they'll present to us
Yeah.
when they come in to present. And I'm sorry, I meant public hearing first. Is there any need for a public hearing?
Pat, since you've got much more experience than me, what's your take on whether or not neighbors would want to have a public hearing and how important that would be for them?
I don't think this is high impact. I don't think I'm huge on public hearings myself. I always like to have a public hearing, but I don't see this being a huge impact. Dave, do you see a need for a public hearing on this?
Yeah, when you got, when the three parameters that you guys consider for whether or not an application should go before a public hearing, there is a fourth, but we rarely go into that one. The main three are whether or not you deem there's a significant impact in the form of a direct impact on wetlands or watercourses. You believe that, or you determine that there's a core activity that's associated with these activities, and that in turn may result in a significant impact, or whether or not you believe the activities proposed would be of the public interest. For this lot, the activities are pretty localized, in that you know, they're really going to be you know, in the context of the lot in the lot itself. If this was part of a wetland system, say, where it was shared by more properties, or if, you know, perhaps something was different where the wetlands was part of a greater system, you may say that it was in the public interest, but I'm not sure. I would see that here, but if you guys think differently, if you're familiar with Codfish Hill Road or this area in general, and you say otherwise, you know, I don't want to discourage that.
Yep. So is there anyone here that feels there should be a public hearing on this?
I do, as a matter of principle, yeah.
Okay.
What would be
Dave,
your reasoning for that, Nico?
Just that it's a wetland. It's a watercourse for the town.
Right, understood. So
Effective.
I say I don't want to suggest public hearing and then try to shepherd you away from it, but not if every application were to be suggested in the public's interest, you guys would really have a backlog in the way of items that you're trying to process all the same way. The site plan review, it's really meant to expedite applications that are smaller in nature, and when you're dealing with just the development of a single family dwelling, as I mentioned, you guys have successfully processed, or the commission rather, has successfully processed a lot of applications that way in the past. And I think with what's been presented and what's been proposed, there would be really no issue going that way.
And
Cool.
and
You got this.
Nico, I'm with you. I would love to do everything as a public hearing. I love public input. But unfortunately, this is why the board's convened, so we can actually represent the public, on all these, and ones that are larger in scope is when the public gets involved. There is also, let's say we decide not to do a public hearing, and there's actually, for lack of a better term, an outcry from the public saying, hey, I want to be able to speak. They are able to petition for a public hearing or come to us and say, hey, listen, we really want a public hearing. And then we usually work with the applicant in that case. So definitely know where you're going with this. I wish everyone could be a public hearing, but that's basically, I think, why we're in place for to handle ones of a lesser scale and then leave the public hearing for the larger scales.
Cool.
Yep.
Getting it.
So that being said, Dave, I think right now we're leaning towards not doing a public hearing. Nico, if that's okay with you at this point?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to you guys with this and see
Yep.
how it goes.
Okay.
So that would be that would be as a site plan review, guys.
Yeah, so we're gonna do it as a site plan review.
So we would need a motion and a second for that.
Okay, I make a
I
motion
second,
for
apologies.
site plan review, and I think Kevin seconded it.
I do second.
Does that work, Dave?
And then all those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
And then do we want to do a sidewalk for this one, guys?
I'm fine not
I-
doing one. If the commission feels to do one, that's fine.
At this point, I don't find it necessary personally, based on if we find something that changes that out within more definitive plan with the driveway, maybe, but at this point, no.
Okay.
I would like to do a site walk.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so we would need a consensus as to which way we're going here.
all right, well, if Nico would like, you know what, it is a, new board with, so it may be beneficial actually to do a site walk and compare it to the map. So,
Yeah.
if Nico likes the site walk, Danielle, your thoughts?
I'm fine with doing a sidewalk, but I'm hoping that we could maybe try to target for the coldest possible day
Absolutely.
coming up, and maybe like some
I love
precipitation.
that.
Do we need to all agree on the sidewalk? I don't mean to drag anybody else out there who doesn't want to go.
No, I believe we have to make a motion on it, the site walk and
Yes,
schedule it. And you got to keep in mind, the site walk, you still need to have a meeting for it. So you need at least 3 people, I believe, Dave, to have a quorum for a site walk.
That's correct.
And the last people who went are exempt from the next one, is that?
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
All right. So why don't we just take a consensus of the board? Danielle, are you in favor of site walk?
Sure, I'll do it. I'm open to.
Okay. All right. So why don't we just do a vote then? All those in favor of site walk for Codfish Hill Road number 28, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those against or opposed? Okay, so the ayes have it. Dave, you want to look at your calendar and work your magic on this one?
Yeah, so I want to focus on when everybody will be best available, and when we have hours of daylight to go out. That seems to be Saturdays for the time being, with us still being in the midst of winter. We do have a bunch of other items coming up agenda wise, and I think it's important that as busy as we are, we try to keep things moving. So if it's possible, over the next 3, if not 4 Saturdays, where you guys are available to go out, that would be great. Whichever one works best for you, you guys let me know. I don't want to pin us down to a date right now, as in the interest of time. So I'll get back to you and let you know, which Saturdays we have in mind, and I'll send out a doodle poll.
Okay,
So
that'll be fine, Dave. Just I know it's supposed to snow 5 to 8 inches on this Saturday, so I know how Danielle loves that. So no, let's try to stay away from this Saturday.
Okay, so yeah.
And Dave, this is a pretty simple site, unless anyone feels differently. Does anything have to be, marked by the applicant, or just have them meet us there and it's significant enough for him to explain it?
So that's at your discretion.
Right, that's why I'm asking the board. If there's anything they feel needs to be staked or anything, I'm fine with being able to be explained by the applicant, but again, I'm more familiar with the maps and stuff. So if you want the corners of building marked or anything, or wetlands or something, we have to let Dave know to let the applicant know.
I'm good, because we can bring site maps as well. Correct, we just print out site maps, small enough property. I would be concerned at location, parking.
Good idea.
We'd have to figure it out. We'll figure it out when we get there, but it's just something on.
Yeah.
on the list.
And Dave, you could follow up with that in your
Yes.
communications.
Yeah. Obviously, I would not want us to park anywhere where we would be endangering anybody to not be able to get out or for us to not be able to access the site safely. If we're able to perhaps do a little bit of a ride share, so to speak, and meet, say, at like St. Mary's, and then have us all, ride share over or whatever you want to use, for lack of a better word.
You could do that.
Carpool over to the site, that may make sense.
If there's an existing access way on the property already, we may be able to utilize that. So it might be worth asking. I know it's on somebody else's property, but
Yeah. So I would have to coordinate with that to
Yes.
make sure that would work.
All right, Dave, so we're leaving to you to coordinate the date and the access.
Yep, date, access, and time. I will get out to the engineer tomorrow to do
Yeah.
that.
Awesome. All right, so we're set with that one?
Yep.
Okay, so let's get to the next one. Whittlesey Drive, number 300, Dave. You want to briefly explain that?
Yep, this is the simplest one that you have on your agenda tonight, and ironically, it's also the one that has the least info at the moment. As I just got a hard copy of the plans today from the engineer, if I can unearth them from all the other paperwork that's either on the floor or on my desk in the office. But here are the hard copies. I will get those to you guys as soon as I can digitally, or if you want to pick up a set in the office. But either way, Whittlesey Drive 300, that is the back of one of the middle schools, and they are proposing to convert one of the existing fields to be an athletic turf field. And part of where that is within 100 feet of a water course that runs behind the public schools complex there. It's the one that goes beneath Dodging Town Road right before you get to the intersection with Judd Avenue. I'll pull it up here on Google Maps real quick, but it's pretty straightforward because to my understanding, they're not expanding the field in any way. They're not going to make an additional playing area. All they're doing is converting what is there now to be turf. So if everybody can look on my screen, I'll show you. So this is the public schools complex here. You have Bethel High School, and I think these are the two elementary schools, and then this is, I think, the middle school right here. The field that's in question is this one right here. As you can see, there's a 100-foot, there's a water course that runs behind the property, and I think there's also a system that runs here as well. I could be mistaken with that, but either way, a portion of this is within the 100-foot, and that's why it's coming before you guys. This is also going to go before planning and zoning as well, and they do intend to have a public hearing for this. And in all likelihood, that the majority of whatever the public's questions may be could probably be answered through the Planning and Zoning Commission medium. Really, for us, I would say you guys can process this as a site plan review. If you do feel that strongly that it is in the public interest, we can also go the way of the public hearing. But again, this isn't anything more than just converting this to be turf, synthetic turf, from what it is now, which is, to my understanding, grass and whatever material you use for infields for softball and baseball.
So Dave, I agree with you. I think most of the input on this wouldn't be wetland related. It would be zoning questions, that sort of stuff on those things. So I am fine with the site plan review. I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels.
I run that. Well, I used to run that all the time because the track and field, not track and field, the what's called the hill behind that is part of the cross country track. I run that all the time for training, still to this day, which it sucks because not sucks, but new police station kind of like rerouted the access to the cross-country track. They kind of rerouted it back there. I didn't even know that was wetlands, to be honest, because I'm down there all the time. Like, I can't foresee that being an issue at all, what they're looking to do. I mean, because that putting down turf doesn't degrade any of the soil properties at all that's underneath it.
No,
They grade it, they lay turf, they run turf, because it doesn't change any of the platform of the land itself. And they're not, and it won't interfere with any kind of water structure, water retention, or anything of that matter, to be completely honest.
How does it affect the water absorption if it's not grass? If it's a synthetic, like, is it a concrete pad underneath the construction?
No, I don't think that they would lay concrete. I have to check this. They usually don't lay concrete. They usually grate pack what's under it and lay flat on top of that, and it's porous. Turf is porous, so it doesn't have anything to do, it won't change any of the water runoff. There won't be any root system from grass there, but
it's definitely a question we could ask the applicant when they
It'll be
come
in
in,
this-
the engineers.
It'll be in the
I doubt they would lay a slab for that, especially where it is. That would.
I don't think they would lay a slab under it because it would make it not good for the athletes to be working on a slab.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do. I imagine they use some sort of a, crushed material, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I would think they would have to have something porous, otherwise good rainfall, you have a pond, never mind a field, so.
Right.
Yeah, it's more or less like a crushed sandstone or a crushed river rock that they use underneath, which that way if the athletes fall, they don't have to have like a direct hard impact onto the body. It's just like falling onto dirt.
Okay. All right, so is there anyone that feels there needs to be a public hearing for this? Okay, so. All right.
Not from an inland wetlands perspective.
I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't quite hear you.
I don't think so in my opinion, not from a wetlands perspective.
Right, and I'm comfortable with the zoning is doing one already, so.
Yeah, that's different. That's on
Right,
them.
that's different.
Yeah, that's on them. Like,
Okay. I'm fine with no site walk. I mean, everyone could walk the field themselves if they wish. I don't know how the board feels, but so anyone feels there need to be a site walk?
anybody want to come running with me next week? More than happy.
I would love to, but I'll get about 100 feet and I'll be done, so. But thank you.
So before we get too ahead of ourselves, we need two motions. The first of which is to accept this application, and the second of which is the medium that we're doing it with.
Okay, so make a motion to accept the application for Whittlesley Drive number 300.
Actually,
Good.
I'm good.
It's okay. All right, make a motion to accept the application of Whittlesley Drive number 300.
I make a motion to accept.
Right, so that'd be the second, Kevin?
Yep, a second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those abstaining? All those against? Okay, so that's accepted.
Okay,
Now the conversation is if there was a public hearing or not, is that right, Dave? Is that what you're
right,
saying?
site plan review or public hearing.
Right, so I believe we said no public hearing, but Danielle, do you feel otherwise on this? Is that, no, and that's fine, please feel free to,
I don't know the environmental impact of runoff of having turf there over grass. And I don't know if it degrades, and I don't know if it feeds into the water systems. And I do think that if I was a member of the public, this is a large piece of property and I would be interested in knowing more about that and having input. Yes, Dave.
Okay, so I'm going to try to head off some of those questions right away. The first of which is regardless of what material that they would use, and you could even say this for if they wanted to somehow revert this back to grass, that the applicant has to show there's going to be zero net increase in runoff from what is there presently. So the fact that you're changing the material that the field is made of, it doesn't matter. water still has to percolate in the same volume in the same time as it does now. So that cannot change. That is a solid parameter regardless of what application you're reviewing and wherever that is. The second of which is I can't imagine there wouldn't be something in the way of, you know, whatever is used to be part of the stormwater management system, that there perhaps be some treatment or some component to capture any medium or any material that otherwise may get displaced. You know, I'm speaking from, this is anecdotal experience here, but I'm remembering the rubberized pellets that you have for turf fields, and I get it. You know, sometimes those get taken with your shoes or whatever, what have you. So I can't imagine that the design for this wouldn't address that, and it wouldn't have anything that would otherwise get introduced as it shouldn't be as part of this application. So wetlands wise, I think it was more of a formality that we were given an application, just because there is an extent of this that may fall within the upland review area, because you're not really expanding the area or intensifying the use of the property. You know, it's staying as a turf field. I think the commission should really be comfortable with going with the site plan review process.
I defer. I don't know these things yet. I'm very new on the commission.
Yeah. If
we talk it out.
Yeah, if there was something that I thought would prompt you guys to go for a public hearing, I definitely would suggest it. But I think with this process, a site plan review is more than adequate to process.
Okay, very comfortable with your expertise.
Danielle, I hear your concerns. If it was a wooded area that they're turning into a turf field, totally different, but you're going from one field to another. And again, it's on us to make sure they're following the law and no, you know, changes once it comes off the property. So,
and this is a town project. They're obviously going to want to do things the right way.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying and taking a moment to.
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
I appreciate you talking it out.
So Dave, are we set with this one now, or you need another motion on something?
I'll need a motion for a site plan review, which I think is the consensus.
All right, so I make a motion for a site plan review for Whittlesley Drive number 300.
Second.
A second.
All in favor?
Okay, thanks. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Against?
Oh, no, I'm in favor.
Okay, against and abstain. Okay, unanimous on that. All right, we're getting there, guys. Team. Plum Trees Road number 49, Dave. You want to give a quick overview on that one?
Yep, I'm going to pull that up again. This is coincidentally another municipal project right down the street, or right down the hill, I guess. If we're relatively speaking here. So I forget what the name of this field is here. There's been goodness knows how many soccer games and baseball games that have been played here on this property, but it is the parcel.
Behind the old police station.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to say, is that okay? That's the police station right there,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
The old one, yes.
Oh,
So
that's right in front of my house. I know exactly.
Yeah.
Where
So this is 49 Plum Trees Road. What's being proposed here is another municipal project in the way of a groundwater well treatment facility. I can't say where it is footprint wise here on this site plan, but the lion's share of the regulated activities are going to be within a regulated upland review area. There is one place where wetlands would get involved, and that or a direct wetlands impact would come into play, and it is that they are going to be replacing a culvert that runs beneath the access way here. I'm not sure aerial wise exactly where that is, but it's the intention of the Public Works Department to have that be an in-kind replacement for whichever contractor would win the job. And everything else would be within your upland review area. I can pull up the site plans here if the computer cooperates. Okay. Yes. And site plan sheets. I think we want to go to, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Which one?
Which site plan are you looking at, Dick? I'm pulling it up now too.
Yeah, so this is 49 Plum Trees Road.
Oh, yeah, which one of the site plans? There's are the listings, the topography one, topographic one, or the
So this is the Bergstrom Well Water Treatment Plant sheet set. It is
okay,
it's
got
owned
it.
by how it's in the Google Drive. It's in the if you go to the address, then you go to surveys and site plan sheets. It's the first PDF.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
got it open. Perfect. That's what I was looking for actually as I was clicking through.
Cool. Okay. So here is the parcel again, the bounds thereof, and on a vicinity map. This is the access way that I was talking about, and this is where they're proposing to have the well treatment facility. There are specific sheet drawings that go into each portion of the site because it's where the activity is occurring. It's all along this access road here, and then ultimately to this point. Your wetlands are along this edge here. There's that watercourse, which is East Swamp Brook flowing this way. And your wetlands extend a little bit further out beyond from that, over on the southern edge here. These are details or close-ups of the water treatment facility. And as I mentioned, that that piping replacement that I had briefly described before. This again is also going before the Planning and Zoning Commission because it's a utilities project, so there will also be a public hearing for this. If you guys want to go through this with being a site plan review, I can see that the merits for this application otherwise being straightforward and being a municipal project, so they're going to be pretty amenable and cooperative with whatever your concerns may be. If you want to do this by public hearing because of the core activity or the significant impact with what's going on here with the culvert, I can understand that too. So any questions you guys have at this time that may sway for you to go one or the other, I'd be happy to answer them.
What would be impact on erosion or as well as additional sediment? Like the nature of what they're looking to do, how would it increase or change water flow into the area, and how would that affect the wetlands?
This access way, this is all, as I mentioned, it's all existing. So they're just going to be replacing something that is already there in the way of. Let me try to see if I can zoom in here on where that might be. So you see here, this is, I believe, in the area where this pipe replacement is, I think is in question. I think it's in this area here between these two ball fields. I think there might be something that flows or that is man-made that connects the rest of the wetland system on this property to outlet here to the watercourse. If it's not in this exact location, it's somewhere in this general vicinity, but it's not like this connection doesn't already exist, and they're certainly not going to do anything to decrease the connectivity here. If anything, they're going to make it either in kind or increase the size to make sure that connectivity stays the way it should. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, they're not changing the platform, they're updating it and being inclusive of the new water treatment, correct?
Right, right. So
Okay.
the water treatment plant, it's how do I say this? It has nothing to do with the wetland. It's for public water supply. So there's going to be piping that comes from this treatment facility that goes to serve or as it's a supplement to the existing water supply system that's already in place. You know, I would defer
Got it.
to. I'm sorry?
And it's all piping based. It's not, none of it is non-exposed water, correct?
Right, exactly.
Okay, understood. I should know that because I've been back there a bunch.
That's okay.
So are they gonna, with the water treatment facility, do we know what that entails? Like, are they drawing water from the wetland to use as water from, or are they just like piping water through it and back from the existing?
That is a good question. I'm not sure if this is within an aquifer, a public water supply area or not. Because if I had 3 applications that came in this week, so I didn't get to.
Yeah.
I believe that is an aquifer. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's right on it or just on the edge of it, but I believe that's an aquifer back there.
Yeah.
There's a that region back in there, it is like a vast, expansive, very, very rich wetland. It's probably the most like potentially active and important wetland in the town, if not the whole region. That's a bold statement that I just made. It's town property. Like basically that whole area back there is wetland.
And it backs up to the park.
It backs up to the parks. Those fields are there. There's like
Enchanted Boardwalk's right near there, yeah?
The Enchanted Boardwalk is there somewhere. There's the East Swamp Brook, which is this really like kind of cool, very flat river that's like open. It's just like a strange and kind of really interesting ecosystem that's like in recovery, trying to recover from, you know, development in the area. Like it has all this like utility development. Like there's the McCower, the parks are there, but there's the electrical substation is in there.
There's that walkway you can walk through too.
That's the Enchanted Boardwalk.
Oh, right, coming
yeah.
off of
Walnut Hill.
So if I can possibly address some of the concerns I'm hearing. So none of what they're doing apart from the piping replacement for the access way involves a wetland at all. In fact, where they're proposing this treatment facility to go, it's all in upland. Your wetlands extend as far as where these flaggings are shown here. So that would leave this area where the facility would go as being upland, even though it's surrounded seemingly by wetlands on 3 sides.
It's completely surrounded by wetlands.
Right. So there's not going to be any direct impact with this. There's no outlet that comes from this that goes into the wetland system itself, and there's nothing that goes out or nothing that comes into this. So they're from what I understand, they're not going to be drawing water from the wetland for the purpose of the water supply. It's a well that you're going to have that this building is above, where they're drawing water from what's in the ground. This is why it's a groundwater well. So nothing's happening at the surface. This is all beneath and in upland for that matter.
And this is, we want to keep in mind, we're looking at accepting the application. So we're accepting an application, Dave, keep me honest, we're just looking to make sure that basically paperwork's in order and we get a general overview. The questions that being asked, great questions, you know, for Dave, if he's able to answer them. If not, you know, that's why the applicant comes in and explains the application. So definitely want to, you know, understand the whole what it is exactly doing there, and the impacts it would definitely have at the
Yeah.
time of it. So
Yeah, I should preface what I say with at this point, the materials that you have to review this application, they're substantially complete. You have a soils report, you have an extensive list of site plans. We even have something from the state because this parcel also falls in what's called a natural diversity database. So the engineers that are working for the Public Works Department on this to present this before you, they're dotting their I's and they're crossing the T's. They're doing their homework. I don't know how any other ways you can say it, but this application is as thorough as one would expect for such a project. I can't say there's anything that would possibly deter you from accepting this. The questions that you're asking, I think, maybe are geared towards whether we do this as a site plan review or as a public hearing. As I mentioned, there's that one area of direct impact with the pipe. Otherwise, it's all upland.
So first question to be answered is, do we accept the application? So I make a motion that we accept the application. All in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait, I need a second, don't I?
Yes, you do need a second.
I'll get this down.
I second.
Beautiful, thank you. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 All those against? And abstaining. Okay, so we accept the
Yeah.
application.
I'll abstain. I don't know what's the point, but
Okay, all right. And just so you know, again, accepting an application doesn't mean you're approving it or denying it. It's just
Right.
saying that we'll review it. Okay, just Mary, Nico abstains on that vote. Okay. So the next question would be, do we do this as a public hearing or a site plan review? Correct, Dave? Am I wording that
Yes,
correctly?
that's correct.
Okay,
You got
so eventually, so how's the board feel? Would you want a public hearing on this, or you want to do it as a site plan review?
The site plan's extensive. I just have a curiosity about, like you said, that one pipe that runs through there, kind of determine whether or not I would want. Because from a wetlands perspective, like takeaway zoning, that's,
Okay.
I wish I could answer that question. I don't know. I don't know how I feel.
So basically, and Dave, keep me honest again, the difference between the two, you get all the same information. The only difference is on a public, obviously public hearing, you get the public input. You always could do a public input. If no one shows, no one shows, or it could be a huge, outcry and a lot of people show. So again, I'm fine going either way, whichever people are comfortable with. It is a large area that's been impacted in the past and could be impacted again. It may have public outcry, it may not. So
I'd make a motion for a public hearing only because I know that the utility of the location is very heavily foot trafficked by a lot of people, including the police use it, like local leagues use it, like that area itself. So I think it'd be a good service as a
okay.
just a citizen of Bethel to opt for a public hearing.
So
And
is this, I don't mean to cut you off. So are we going for the reasoning to accept this as a public hearing on the grounds of public interest, Kevin?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
it's second.
And I
that.
believe Kevin made the motion. I'll second it.
Thank you.
Any discussion, more discussion? All those in favor of accepting it, or all in favor of having this as a public hearing, signal by saying aye.
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 Okay, all those against and abstaining. So I believe it's unanimous for a public hearing.
Okay. I'll get back to you guys. I'm going to schedule the site walk for this. Ideally, if it's not too much, we'd have the site walk for this and for 28 Codfish Hill Road on the same day, so we get them taken care of back to back. If it works better for a different arrangement, you guys can let me know, but I'll have another doodle pull out for that, so we can get that going. And we want to do a site walk.
Okay.
No,
moving-
I'm pretty flexible, so for the next, luckily, 6 weeks, so.
I got garble. I'm sorry, Kevin. What was that?
No, I didn't know if you were asking for planning purposes, but
Okay.
next 6 weeks is fine, weekend wise.
And
Okay.
when do we want to open this hearing? We have up to 65 days to open this one.
Dave, what do we have on our next meeting? Do we know if it's a lot or?
So February 28th, we have the continuation of the public hearing for, excuse me, it's escaping me. 48
Stony Hill Road.
Road. And then we'll also have 28 Codfish Hill Road and 300 Whittlesey Drive that are just starting that night. So if you guys want to wait on this one until your next meeting in March, that's up to you. Amenable to whatever works best for you guys.
I'm fine with pushing it off. Is that what you're saying, Danielle?
Yeah, that sounds like a lot for one night.
Yeah, we want to try to finish before 10 o'clock. So, yeah, let's, I'm in favor of pushing off. Anyone feels different?
I'll second that.
Okay. Dave, you don't need a motion for the date, right?
Yes, I do actually, because it's a public
Okay,
hearing.
so make a motion, we schedule this public hearing for March's meeting. I
March
forget the-
28th.
March 28th.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, I need a second.
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 Awesome. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against? And abstain. All right. Dave, you're set with that?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next order of business.
Pat, sorry, can I cut? Oh, did you guys
Absolutely.
do a site walk for that?
Dave's gonna figure
gonna
out
coordinate that with you-
sidewalks and
with
try
you
to
guys
organize
myself.
it for us.
Love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next order of business is meeting notes. So is there any discussion on the meeting notes from December 13th or the site walk from the 15th? Okay, hearing none. Make a motion to accept the meeting notes from the special meeting on the 13th of December.
Second.
All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Okay, notes are accepted. Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the special meeting on the January 15th. Just need a second.
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 Awesome. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Beautiful. Dave, I think we're down to you now.
Okay, 2 minutes, you can time me. We have administrative approval, Chestnut Ridge Road, 132 Chestnut Ridge Road. It was for the construction of a 12 by 16 foot tool shed within a regulated upland review area. For new members, for projects that are even smaller than the ones that we looked at tonight, or ones that I mentioned otherwise that Cynthia has weighed in on. If someone is proposing to do something like a barn or a garage or a shed or something that's really small within upland review area that's already been disturbed, the state gives me the power as, or the authorization as your agent to process applications by way of agent approvals. So that's what this is all about. I will give you guys a brief idea for where this is, so you know what we're talking about here. So if everybody can see my screen for the last time tonight, this is Chestnut Ridge Road. This is going towards Center Town, Carolutions, and all that. This is going towards Reading. This is that parcel right before Gretchen Lane going southbound. And the owner of this property wants to put a shed in an area that has been cleared right here behind a pond and a water that drains towards town. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I asked for standard erosion sedimentation controls to be installed. I go out and inspect them. And then after everything gets done, I go out to take a look for a zoning compliance inspection and pretty much verify that nothing was done that shouldn't have been done. Any questions?
No.
That's what I like to hear. Thank you, guys. Last thing for me tonight. Cynthia briefly touched on this before when she was doing her presentation, but we have long awaited good news from the state in the way of training for you guys. Darcy Winter, the one of the management program staff for the state of Connecticut DEEP has advised that the online training program for staff such as myself and commissioners such as you guys, which is free and it includes subject for which you guys review, is up and online. I can send you the link if you want to do this training program. Highly recommended. Very insightful, very educational, does a lot of stuff that, or covers a lot of stuff that you guys review in the courses in the course of your application. So I highly recommend you guys reach out to me if you're interested in doing this. I can send out the link in an email tomorrow. And that is all I have for you guys tonight.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, definitely share the link. The more I know, the better.
Second.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the agenda. Does anyone on the commission have anything they wish to bring up or share or discuss besides what's on the agenda? Okay.
Sure.
All right, I entertain a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, sorry you ran so late, everybody.
Thank you,
No
guys.
worries.
A little quicker. Great,
good night,
everyone have a nice night.